Hello and welcome to the Biz Communication Show, where every week we bring you outstanding authorities in the field of communication so that they can share with us the tips and the strategies that have given them the well-deserved reputation that they have. Today, I have the wonderful privilege, as you do as well, of hosting Terry Brock. Terry first came to mind several years ago. In fact, I guess it must have been nearly 20 years ago now, when I was attending the National Speakers Association Regional Conference in Chicago. And this guy with a great voice named Terry Brock came on stage to welcome us to the convention. Little did I know, as they say when they want to use trite phrases, little did I know that Terry Brock would become a wonderful friend, a tremendous mentor, and definitely a role model for me. For 2 decades, I have found Terry accessible, helpful, resourceful, and responsive. So it is a terrific pleasure to bring you now my friend and soon to be yours, Terry Brock. Hello, Terry.
Bill, it is great to be with you today. Thanks for having me on board.
I've anticipated this as a privilege for a long time. One of the things that people who know you well understand, Terry, is that there's one theme. We all have themes that we change, of course, because we grow, we develop. But there's one theme that you have had, which has been, I'll say, predominant and permanent. And that is where you advise all of us who want to succeed in business. When we think about communication, concentrate on relationships before you concentrate on commerce. Tell us what you mean by that, please.
Well, I think it's called being a human being. It's too often we think in terms of, oh, gee, what can I do? And you see someone as a customer and we forget, hey, wait a minute, hold the phone there, Sparky. This is a person, a human being that you want to talk to. Get to know them first. I see that that's a mistake that many salespeople who probably have a lot of good ambitions to get ahead, they miss sight of that we forget there's a human being. We need to start by doing, as has been said by some of the great sales communicators through the centuries, we have 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth. And that's the proportion where we should use them. I would even say probably do a little bit more of the listening and looking around to find out what that person wants. But building those relationships is what matters most. And when we can do that, I think we do a lot better as human beings. And it also helps the bottom line as well.
As a professional speaker, you, of course, Terry, know a great deal about using stories and illustrations that people can relate to. And the one that I constantly think about you on in this regard is your illustration that you don't, if you're planning on getting married, you don't just walk into a bar, sit down by a good-looking lady and say, hey, let's get married.
Exactly. That's exactly right. I think too often that's what many well-meaning but short-sighted, we'll use that term, short-sighted salespeople are doing. They have only their sale in mind, and they want to jump immediately there, and they don't have the proper protocol. They don't have the proper steps. And I think that goes a long way. When you can get to know that person, you find out more what they want. It might be that they are better suited for your red widgets than your blue widgets. You need to find that out. You do it by asking questions and then sincerely listening and following up. I think, Bill, you can tell a difference between people who are really good and those who are, well, maybe not as good as they could be. And that's when they are able to follow up Too many times people will realize, okay, I guess I should say something, how are you? And you'll find the more amateur people, I'll use that term again, the amateur people are those who will ask, well, how have you been doing? And you say, oh, well, I went to Los Angeles. Really? Well, I went to Los Angeles too, and I've been in that, And by the way, that literally is what happened to me a while back. And I was talking to some lady that I think she was interested in more than just business, but quickly turned me off. This was many, many years ago. And but as soon as she had been talking on and on and on, having what I like to call eye trouble. Now, I don't mean I as in EYE, the I in your head. I mean the letter I. It seemed like all that people like that want to talk about is themselves. I did this, I did that, etc. This lady, she just talked about herself over and over, and then she kind of caught herself realizing, oh, she's been doing all the talking. So, well, what are you doing, Terry? And it just so happened I was getting ready to do a program in Los Angeles. And I said, oh, well, let's see, I'll be going to Los Angeles next week. She interrupted me and started talking about her trips to Los Angeles through the years. I thought, she just does not get it at all. Well, we wish her the best, but there's too many people, I think, like that out in the world. They really don't care about anyone except that person they see in the mirror.
And what happens quickly, what should be dialogue just becomes monologue. It reminds me so much, since you mentioned sales, of a comment that Jeffrey Gitomer, a sales expert, made that I refer to so often, where he said, if you're telling, you're not selling.
Yep, I think so. I think that's very true. That, we just got back from a conference, and I go to conferences all the time. I remember a little while ago, I was at a conference, and I was getting a chance to talk with different people, and I realized how important it is to do more listening. Do a lot more listening and asking questions. Because think about it, when you go to a conference, you're getting a chance to meet people who are very smart, people who have a lot of good experience, often in a particular area that you want to learn about. That's why you go to these conferences. And I see too many people that spend their time talking only about themselves, not sitting down and really taking advantage of that person that's sitting in front of them, asking their opinion, finding out what they would do or what they think about this. I think it was Chuck Reeves, a great speaker from right there in the Atlanta area, that years ago was mentioning in a presentation. He's a wonderful man, just really, really smart and very good communicator. And he said, often when you get done with a conversation, you need to step back and think, okay, who knows more about the other person? Who has been talking more? And I think the idea for me is it goes back and forth. A good conversation is reciprocal. It should be, if not 50-50, not much more than 60-40. But if you find yourself around a really smart person and they're willing to talk to you and you can gain a lot of information, hey, 80-20, 90-10, if they're doing the talking, that's good. But you're the one that's learning and gaining from them when you can listen more. Always good to listen.
Terry, since you talk about going to conferences and listening to people and learning from them, you, as I said at the outset, have been one of my incredible gurus, and you've done that so often, so generously, and so creatively. I know quite well that you did not attain the international status and credibility that you have simply on your own merit and your own knowledge. Who are some of the people that influenced you, guided you, taught you, encouraged you, and helped you develop into the leader that you are?
Well, Bill, do you have about 4 hours for this thing? Then we can get started on it. But right now, there's a lot of people, and I owe a lot to those. I think of Sir Isaac Newton, who said, I am where I am because I was standing on the shoulders of giants. And one that I've shared with you about, a person that meant a lot to me, was a person I was just really honored to know. He was the best professor I had in my MBA program, Dr. Stanley. And Dr. Stanley was my professor there in marketing. Strategic planning was the class I had. It was very good. Now, the rest of the world knows him as Tom Stanley. Thomas Stanley, who is the co-author of the series, The Millionaire Next Door. And he'll always be Dr. Stanley to me, but he influenced my life a great deal. And I was just honored to get a chance to know him and be in class with him. Others that have helped me have been through the National Speakers Association, people like you, Bill, who are a model to me. And I get a chance to see your life and think, okay, I want to be kind of like Bill because Bill does all these good things. And seriously, I appreciate you. Others that I've seen that have helped me a great deal as I get a chance to know them in many ways, I find they help me. And then also, there are those who are no longer with us, but I get a chance to know them anyway because I read. People like Andrew Carnegie, who I've been able to follow and read some of his work and what Napoleon Hill said about him, Napoleon Hill himself and his way of teaching and helping us, and many, many people. But I think what we all need to do is to have those mentors around us, have people that are real live people that we can talk to, as well as borrow from the geniuses who have been here before. I think of people like Ayn Rand is another person, a great philosopher who came here from the Soviet Union, escaped from there, and her work has helped me enormously to learn about life, how we should live, what we should do in life. I think going back to people like Aristotle. You know, I wasn't around much when he was here, but I did get a chance to read when he talks about the importance of logic, the importance of A is not non-A, thinking clearly in our minds. I think those are the kind of people that we want to be around. And for me, reading from the wisdom of greats is really how we are able to get much more knowledge and able to learn how to live life in a much more enriched and full way.
I've been impressed, Terry, in years past when I would find out from you that you truly make almost every waking moment a learning moment. For example, I remember you're telling me that when you would go into a grocery store, you might have a device along and you're listening to an audio CD, something instructional, something beneficial. You're just so keen on making every minute count. This is not to say that you don't have your recreational moments. I know about the unicycle and other hobbies that you have, but you do maximize, you create opportunities for learning, whereas in fact, I think I remember you don't even own a regular television set.
That's correct. One of the smartest things I did, Bill, is a bunch of books in there. I haven't read all of them yet. I'm working on it, but I haven't read them all yet. And they let me read them for free. I kind of like that. You know, I can go in there and we can tap into it. It's like you and I both heard of and embrace the concept of lifelong learning. And I think that's a wonderful concept. I embrace that. But I'll see their lifelong learning, and I'm going to raise it to day-long learning. I think that throughout the day, we learn. Zig Ziglar, another great gentleman from Mississippi, said, like you, Bill, he said that a good philosophy to have is when you're sitting, read. And when you're moving, listen. Even years ago, he would encourage listening to those old audio cassettes. Very important. Then kind of migrated up to the CDs. Now, of course, we're using MP3 players through our portable phones or other devices. And I think whatever the technology is going to be, we want to continue to saturate our mind with good quality information. And for those that are listening, I would even encourage them to think about replacing some other audio. Like, for instance, the other day, I tried an experiment. I woke up here and I went into the kitchen to get breakfast, and I listened to a thing called the radio. And they had, like, on the local radio station here in Orlando, I don't know what it's like there in your area, in Gainesville, Atlanta area, but they had noise on there about traffic going on. There was all kinds of jams and a problem here. Now, I'm not driving. I work out of home, so that really doesn't affect me, and I don't care to know that their helicopter coverage is going to keep you informed every 12 minutes of what's happening. Didn't matter. And they also had some news about terrible things that were happening on the other side of the planet that were tragedies. People were losing their lives, and it was bad, but didn't really affect me. And then, the real key, and there was a tragedy on the west side of town last night where da-da-da-da happened, and I thought, boy, that's a bad thing too, but why do I really need to know about that? Versus, let me listen to some really good podcasts where people who are really smart are talking about really important topics that can help me in my life. Now, I'm aware of what's going on in the world, and occasionally I will listen to the local news. Just I can find out something. If I'm going to drive, I might listen a little bit to the radio, but usually I find I don't need that nonsense. I'll use that term. I don't need that nonsense clogging up my mind, worrying me about something that they're doing or something that they're doing really stupid up in Washington, because they tend to do that. It doesn't matter what political party is in charge or whatever. They're doing something really stupid, those rascals up there. But I find we ought to take our time and saturate our mind with good quality education, good quality books, podcasts that are out there, and there's just literally thousands and thousands of good podcasts. The biggest frustration I find, there's so many good ones out there, we just can't listen to them all. But that's okay. Those are good kind of problems to have. Anyway, just my thoughts, and I think the idea of constantly learning is really a good way to live life.
You mentioned not listening to the news. I remember so well, several years back, may have been a dozen years or so ago, I was watching Andrew Weil. I'm sure you're very familiar with him. This was about a 9-part video series that he was producing on public broadcasting. Mm-hmm. And he was giving some ways that we could increase our sense of serenity and calmness and balance in life. And he said, number one, stop listening to the news, because the news is not going to be anything encouraging. The news is going to be bad. It's going to be discouraging. It's going to be debilitating. So interestingly enough, you and Andrew Weil agree that there are better things that we can fill our mind with. Now, you mentioned podcast. Okay. This leads me to my next question. In addition to being widely known as a person who values relationships for commerce, you also, Terry, are recognized as a technology expert. Every year I read about you going to the CES meeting where, as you put it, you learn the latest gizmos and gadgets. When you get back, you send through your social media, you send recommendations on which ones are worth our attention and possibly our purchase. Okay, we can't, none of us, because of time limitations and budget and what we are able to learn, we can't get everything. So if you are serving as a consultant for a business and they say, Terry, what do you think are the basics? What are the essentials that we need in technology to compete and to be a true front runner in our competition? What's your answer to them?
Well, the answer is going to be, it depends. And how's that for a good answer? Because it really depends on what you want to do. I look at where we are today, like for instance, let me grab over here, this little device. Smartphone, we've all got most of us have these today. They work really well, but think about it. This is a great tool for living life, for connecting with people, and getting the right apps. I think when they put apps on here, the applications that you can put on here that are unique to you, that's really good. I think one of the key tools is make sure that you've got a good tool that gives you the ability to tap into important people. Building relationships, as you know and as you've said so kindly, is most important to me. In business, I think having a good CRM, that contact relationship manager, have something you can use. I'm using one that works on my smartphone, on my laptop computer, on my tablet, from wherever I happen to be, because it is based in the cloud. The one I'm using is called Nimble, Nimble. Now, there are many good tools out there, CRMs. Find one that works for you. And I think having a good system like this is good. Another one, well, here, let me show you. I'm right here in my study, so I can show you all the cool tools I got right now, is this right here, which is the case that contains my iPad. Got my iPad mini, and it's got a little keyboard built into it because I can move it apart like this. So for reading, this is ideal. And the keyboard works for creating and typing. It works great for sending email messages. Sends great for writing. and all of that. Plus, I can use it for video, and the video I use gives me the ability to connect with others as well. One of the tools that I think would be important is, well, one that I'm using right now, and that is, I'm going to show you right now. You don't see it, but here it is. This is my new little Raspberry microphone from Blue Microphones. Notice, by the way, Bill, see, I put it down there. Hey, nobody can see that, right? Don't tell the grown-ups, okay? It's not there, but I put that underneath there so that it still gives me the good quality. By the way, Bill, how's my voice coming through right now?
Absolutely excellent, as your voice always does.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, having that, and the nice thing about this one, it's very small, very tiny. Matter of fact, let me just give a little bit of education here. Bill, you've seen me use one over here. It's a little bit bigger and heavier. This is the Yeti microphone, a great little microphone. Well, it's not so little, but it's a studio quality microphone. And I've used that. I'm putting it over here since the folks at Blue Microphones gave it to me years ago when it first came out. This was the one that Steve Jobs went to Skipper Weiss, who was the COO at the time of Blue Microphones, and said, I want you to create a microphone for me. And they said, yeah, we can do it and everything. And they said, it's going to cost $250. Steve Jobs said, no, it can only cost $150. And they said, Steve, it's going to have to take this. And they argued back and forth. And yes, when it came out at 150, they finally did it. And it's been a consummate, wonderful microphone. The challenge, though, is it's very large. This one, very small and tiny, and it works not only with your Mac computer, but it also works with your iOS devices like your smartphone or your iPhone. It'll work with your iPad, and very easy to give you quality, high quality professional audio wherever you happen to be for connecting with others. And that gives you a real advantage in business. So I know for me and for many people who are thought leaders, who are in sales, who are mobile executives, mobile professionals, having a tool like the Raspberry that I just showed you I'm using right now would be really good for that. And then what I would suggest is to find a source that can be a filter. Someone that can say, based on what you need in your unique profession, in the work that you do, I would recommend this, and maybe one of these. What you would not want would be this, and this. And so you want someone that can customize that for you and make sure that they're getting the assistance they need. But like you said, CES, it's a wonderful place. I love it. I've called it for many years the land of gizmos, gadgets, and geeks galore, where I get together with about 175,000 of my closest friends and get a chance to see some of the latest technologies that are out there and the latest ideas of what's going on. I often learn a lot just from talking to people in the hall, talking with people on what's going on and what they find working and what's not working. So find those areas that work for you in your profession and hang around them.
I know you have been a great resource for me in helping me learn technology and know which technology to use. And the best news that I can give about technology is that over the past 15 to 20 years, it has become simpler, it's become more cost-effective, and it's far more accessible universally than it was when you and I first started talking about technology. Terry, we have time for one more question, but note please that is just for this particular interview recording conversation, because you are going to be back in a few months when we can schedule you again. The concluding question is this one. Many people who know you know that you have done coaching, speaking, and consulting across the globe. I remember quite a few years back, it was 35 countries. I don't know how many it is now. Give us a couple of quick tips on how, if we're doing international business, how we can communicate effectively with good manners, with courtesy, and adhering to the customs of the country we're working in.
Well, that's an important question because too many people go into another country thinking, well, I want them to do things the way that I do. I remember people that would say they would go to Japan, for instance, and what they want is a good American hot dog and a hamburger. Well, in Tokyo, you can probably find that in most major cities, but why do that when you're in Japan, for example? Why not find out about Japanese food that's really good? Why not find out about their culture? And so I think wherever you're going, you want to maintain an attitude of being humble, a learning attitude, an inquisitive thinking and listening and caring for them. There, again, think about listening a lot more than you are talking. And when you do talk, ask more questions. I think that's going to be important wherever you go. Like, for instance, find out cultural items about that country before you get there. For instance, some of the things in countries, you definitely, not just optionally, you definitely want to take your shoes off before you go into their home. And that's a real sensitive issue in some cultures. Find out what it is that's them. How you shake hands. You know, do you shake this way or do you do it this way? I mean, what do you do? Do you bow? Which, by the way, is a lot more sanitary, too, than shaking hands. The Japanese do that, and I think they got us on that one. They're ahead of us. But find out what they do. And even countries where you think, oh, gee, it's going to be pretty much the same. If you go to Canada, that is a different country, okay? It is not the 51st state. They think a little differently in many ways. They can operate a little differently. But I think wherever you go, have an attitude of learning and study up on the culture before you get there. Learn as much about the language. Learn how to say thank you in their language. Very important. I like to try to learn how to say thank you in several different languages. How do you say good morning or hello or terms like that? People appreciate it when you're trying to speak their language. Learn the culture and the customs as much as possible. And I think just have a really spongy mind where you can learn and have a mind like an information. Think of yourself as an information vacuum cleaner. That you're just sucking up information from everywhere you go to learn and to contribute in a positive way, rather than going in thinking that you know all there is to know. Learn from them, and I think life will be much more enriched.
Terry Brock, we have learned a lot from you today. We appreciate it so much, and I know that our viewers and listeners want to get in touch with you. So tell us, please, the contact information that you want to provide.
Well, there's a lot of ways they can reach me through social media, through email, and all of that can be found over at my website, which is terrybrock.com, and you spell that Terry, and Brock is spelled the right way, B-R-O-C-K. So it's terrybrock.com. You go over there, you'll see all the information, and I would look forward to hearing from people to find out about ways that they are growing and how they're learning and what they're doing. And if they have questions where I can help, by all means, let me know.
Now, when they go to look for Terry Brock on the internet, I'll have to tell them, don't get distracted by Terry Brock, the drummer.
Yeah, there's a singer, too, a guy that sang with a group called Kansas. You remember Carry On, Our Wayward Son? Yes. Well, there's another Terry Brock, and there's some others out there as well. So that's where you have to make sure you get it right. But fortunately, I was the one that got terrybrock.com out of all the bunches of Terry Brocks out there, and I'm glad of that.
You deserve it, sir. You deserve it. Again, Terry, thank you so much for being with us. I know people will want to contact you, and take my word for it. You will learn from this man constantly. You'll be inspired by him. You will have a role model as well. Thank you very much for being with us today. Every week, as I said at the outset, we bring you an outstanding communication expert so that we can benefit from the tips and strategies that they give us. Thanks. Look forward to having you with us next week.
Thank you, Bill.